So, as many kids did before the internet became common, when I became interested in a subject, I went to my local library and looked up books on the subject. Somewhere around the age of 9 or 10, I was starting to graduate from my wooden trains and wanted to know more about model trains, an interest I was vaguely aware of. So I did just that. I went to the kids section of the library and searched for model trains and found one book on the subject, How to Run a Railroad by Harvey Weiss. And as they say, everything after that was history. How to Run a Railroad was written by self-proclaimed tinkerer and gadgeteer and was published in 1977 and was aimed at the target audience of young people. So I found the book at the right age. Based on Weiss's other books listed and per the biography in the back of the book, Weiss wrote on many hobby subjects for what we would call today tweens. It should be noted that this book was not published by any of the big-name model railroad publishers of the era, such as Karstens or Kalmbach, but did seem to have help from some big-name manufacturers such as Lionel and Tyco. All complete with nothing but black and white photos. The tagline of the book is, "Everything you need to know about model trains." And I can't disagree. In 127 pages, Weiss describes everything from basic model train and prototype terminology to buying model trains to building a layout and expanding said layout. And on a recent read for this video, I have to say, a lot of the basic introductory stuff still holds true today. Of course, it doesn't mention DCC or how to super detail your freight cars, but if you needed someone to have a baseline understanding of trains and model trains, the first 6 chapters are invaluable. Things such as the White locomotive classification system, scales, including information on the brand new yet somewhat hard to use N scale, how DC and AC systems work, how to set up a train set, freelance model railroads, track plans, and even some ideas concerning operations are covered in this book. The remaining 6 chapters are regarding the author's purpose-built for the book model railroad known as the North Happenstance and Piddleton Railroad. The layout starts off as a simple loop of track on a 3 by 5 foot by 7 foot piece of plywood to an absolutely glorious spaghetti bowl central in the same space with an elevated trolley line and some double track. Along the way, Harvey shows his skills ballasting with sawdust and at making tunnels and hills with chicken wire and plaster and scratch-built buildings and bridges. So I still love this book for 2 reasons. First is the educational content. Yes, I read it 30 some odd years after it was written, and I'm making this video 20 years after that. Yes, at the time, a lot of the information was a bit outdated. However, the basics of model railroading haven't changed that much. The definition of a boxcar or crossover or switcher hasn't changed. The Weiss system is still in use today to describe different types of steam locomotive. Scales such as O, HO, and N can be confusing for the newcomer, and knowing why the different scales exist and how large the trains themselves are is quite helpful. There's also photos accompanying the descriptions to give the modeler an idea what they might want to run. There's a section advising the reader to buy their first train set at a hobby shop and not at a bargain or toy store. And while this may be to help plug the hobby shop that helped Weiss get products for this book, it is still sage advice that stands today. Simple operations are also covered, as most modelers don't build layouts just for trains to go in circles. We want to haul freight cars and people in a realistic manner from point A to point B, even if we have to pretend the same layout location is both A and B. Second reason I recommend this book comes into focus when Weiss starts building his layout, the North Piddleton and Happenstance Railroad. As with most books on model railroads, we start with making the benchwork, laying track, building structures, bridges, and scenery, and more on operations once the layout is finished. So if it's standard boilerplate stuff, why do I love How to Run a Railroad? Because it's just simple model railroading fun. So the first iteration of the np&h is a loop of track with Happenstance Station on a loop and a spur that runs to North Piddleton. There's a raised portion of the track that reminds me of using block risers with wooden Thomas trains, with a bridge and a plaster mountain in the corner. A small 040 with a classic sloping tender lettered for the CN&W provided power for the layout. Though Weiss makes a single plastic structure kit, the rest of his building and bridges are scratch-built from cardboard, dowels, and popsicle sticks. One of the more impressive structures is a working derrick used to load cars in the yard that shows up in the second and third iterations of the layout. Don't get me wrong, the buildings have massively oversized doors, and the crossbucks are the same size of a scale helicopter rotor. But they're still fun to look at. The layout sticks with the same aforementioned 3 by 5-foot by 7-foot benchwork, but Weiss expands it 3 times. After explaining how to wire for block control, the layout receives a small inner loop of track, a tunnel, and a 2-track yard. The spur to North Piddleton is moved to accommodate this. A small center cap diesel switcher is added to the roster. Then Weiss goes on to explain all the options you could do to extend your own empire. Weiss suggests more grades, more room, more hills and mountains, and possibly a trolley line. It did make me chuckle when he mentions that you'll be unpleasantly surprised to find brass trolleys may cost as much as $80. Weiss also said one could build more buildings, build your own locomotives and cars, and you can always learn more to expand your time in the hobby. Then comes iteration number 3 of the np&h in the aptly titled chapter Breaking All the Rules. Weiss opines in this chapter that he really doesn't care that much about realism and decided to add an elevated figure 8 loop in the middle for a trolley to run on. Small mountain was added in the middle to help support this addition. Highly unrealistic, but as a 10-year-old, it looked like an absolute blast. And to be honest, it still does, and that brings me to my final point. This book reminds me of a simpler time when I was younger and model railroading was nothing but fun. Don't get me wrong, I love the hobby. These days as an adult, I'm working with time and budget restraints, and why does it seem that certain boxcar I really need for my layout is manufactured in every scale but N? I find I'm doing hours of research sometimes just to learn nothing new about the operations of a prototype. It can sometimes feel like a chore. I'm also sure the creeping stress of life, work, and kids also colors my mood and feelings when I'm working on a particularly frustrating problem on my layout. And that's when it's nice to just run trains in a loop and recharge the batteries, both modeling and otherwise. How to run a railroad is just that. Someone just having a great time building model trains and operating their layout the way they see fit without too much concern for the prototype. Is the np&h the best kind of modeling? I'd say no. But does it harken back to a simpler time in my modeling life and my actual life when everything was new and fun and simple? Yes. So should you run out to Amazon and buy How to Run a Railroad? Well, let's start with price. By my own search, you can get it hardcover for $12, which to me seems like a fair price. Is this book a goldmine of information? No. So don't get it if that's what you are looking for. If you're older and want a bit of nostalgia, or you're into older model railroad books, then yes, it's a good book to get. Or maybe buy it and sit it out at your next operating session or club meeting. I think it would become a conversation piece. How to Run a Railroad is a reminder of and harkens back to a simpler time in your modeling journey, whether that be 10 years ago or 50. Thanks all for watching. If you like this video, I have another similar to this regarding 48 top-notch track plans. Check that out in the in-screen video. It's been a while since I've posted anything, but it's summer and the overtime is flowing and I've got to support my train habit somehow, so the posting will probably slow down a bit for the next few months. Please like and subscribe. See you later.